Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Kabuki Quantum Fighter, brought to us by Human Entertainment and HAL Laboratories. Now, Kabuki Quantum Fighter is an action platformer that borrows elements from some of the more popular platformers on the NES, including Ninja Gaiden. Now, I'm sure you recognize the publisher, HAL America or HAL Laboratories, for they are the producers and creators of the Adventures of Lolo series, as well as the Kirby series. Now, the developer was actually Human Entertainment, who also has done the Fire Pro Wrestling series, as well as a vast array of different games for different platforms. And at the start of the game, we have our cutscene that plays out that gives us our basic storyline for this title. Now, with our storyline out of the way, we have our title screen of Kabuki Quantum Fighter, and now we're going to actually jump into the gameplay. Now, the storyline is a little bit weird. You have the main defense computer of Earth has a virus in it, and you have Scott O'Connor, our main character, goes under a procedure to transplant his brain into binary code in order to enter the computer and battle with the virus, which inside the actual computer manifests itself as these creatures and all these different perils that we're going to have to deal battle with. And you may be wondering why he is a Kabuki fighter, Kabuki being a type of dance play in Japan, and it's because his grandfather apparently was, so they figured that since it was in his blood, somehow he gets turned into a Kabuki fighter. Now, for the actual gameplay, like I already previously mentioned, it's very similar to Ninja Gaiden. Just the overall look and style of the game is reminiscent of those titles, as well as being able to climb and jump off of walls, and just the whole swinging aspect is something that we've seen in some other games. But it works very well in the game. The animation is very fluent and looks very nice for the 8-bit era, and it works well when you're trying to swing to these platforms, like I am currently at the top of the screen. It works well once you get used to it. And you may have noticed my main weapon that I'm using so far is my own hair. My hair is used kind of as a whip that I can throw out and attack most of my enemies. Throughout the game, we'll also have different abilities that we will gain by defeating certain levels and by defeating certain bosses. We can change to those items by hitting the select button, and every time we use those items, a different amount of our chip energy is used. Now, here is our first boss. A very simple boss overall. He hops around and he does throw some fire at you on the ground, which is easy to dodge if you want to. Since usually you're going to have a good amount of health going into the battle, and your hair does a very good amount of damage to him, you'll be able to hit him way more than he'll hit you, and you can drain his health pretty quickly without even really having to dodge a whole lot of his abilities. I think the game also has a few similarities to the Batman Sunsoft games, mainly the first Batman title. Now, by completing the first stage, our energy gun has been powered up, which is our first ability that we had other than our hair. Shoots out a little blast, like a single shot blast, out at enemies. Now, it's very weak in comparison to the hair, but since it does have a longer range than the hair, it can be useful for fighting enemies, especially if you're standing on a platform and enemies on a platform farther away from you and you can't reach them with the hair. The gun does get pretty useful. However, this early in the game, most of our biggest problems and most of our biggest perils is actually the platforming, and not actually the enemies that we have to take care of. The whole swinging animation, the whole swinging mechanic, does take a tiny bit to get used to. However, it will feel natural, and you'll get very used to it very quickly. It's not something that is broken or it's going to be fighting you the whole time. When you want to swing to a certain location, you're going to be able to every time. You can see at the bottom of the screen that you have a large amount of health to deal with, and thankfully when enemies do damage to you, you do have invincibility time. When you take damage, you'll have a few seconds that you're flashing, and you'll be able to walk through that enemy and get past them before they're able to do damage to you again. Now, we have entered Stage 2, Area 2, and we're actually heading from top to bottom in this stage, a little bit different than we have been already, just going straight through from left to right in the previous two stages that we've done. Thankfully, most of the enemies you can avoid altogether, and actually this was a pretty short overall area. Most of the stages are pretty short. It's an overall pretty short game, but the fun is there of being able to do all that platforming. Now this is our second boss, and he's very similar to the first boss that we fought, but he does have a different ability. He shoots out this laser that forms into two different balls that start traveling around the screen and hitting you. He also likes to do a lot of somersaults and flips through you. He then will split into two different forms, one of them being his real form, the other one being a fake form. Usually the left one is always his real form, and you'll be able to hit that one, the other one will disappear, and then you'll be able to drain his health once again, just like we did in the first boss. As long as you have a good amount of health going into the battle, you should have no problem taking him out. Now, for completing the second area and defeating the second boss, we get the fusion gun, which is our most useful weapon that we've gotten so far. That is our second gun that we got. The fusion gun is this one. It shoots out a tri-shot of 3 fireballs that do a lot of damage, and you can see is already really useful for defeating the enemies as I travel upwards in this stage. In this level, our biggest things, obviously, is more of the platforming. We have these ice blocks that we have to deal with, which of course is going to have the same kind of friction that we've seen in other ice areas in video games on the NES. We also have to deal with conveyor belts, another style of peril platform that we've dealt with many times in the past. Now, one interesting thing about the game that's actually pretty useful and a pretty unique concept to it is you actually can exchange health for chips and chips for health. By pressing start and pausing the game and then pressing up or down on the D-pad, you can actually change 1 health into 2 chips or 2 chips into 1 health, depending upon if you need either or. So if you're low on health and have plenty of extra chips, you can get some extra health back. The only downside is that only works during boss battles. Now in this area, as you can see the fire comes out, you want to time your jumps just before you know it's about to turn off. Make your jump upwards so that you'll be able to jump up twice quickly before the fire turns back on so that you don't take damage from it. Now as we reach the top here, we completed stage number 3, and now we move on to our third boss battle. Now this is our third boss. It's kind of a moving plant. It is an alien that kind of detaches the tentacles from it and then floats across the screen, which is easy to jump over. When he's in his main form, when he's actually green and the tentacles are at his feet, you can just walk right next to him and keep blasting him with shots. The hair is easily the best weapon to use here. You can do a lot of quick hits on him very quickly and drain his health just as fast as some of the other bosses that we've already faced. And since you do have a good amount of health usually coming into this battle, since there is a lot of health in the game, or if you need some extra, just transform some of your chip energy into health, he will be taken care of pretty fast. Now for defeating that boss, we get the quantum bombs. Now the quantum bomb is actually a stick of dynamite that you throw out at enemies and it explodes, and anything within the radius gets hit multiple times for a few seconds. Now this can easily be considered the best overall weapon that we get during the course of the game. Now here in stage number 4, we have more of the same of the platforming. It's become a little bit more treacherous with a little bit more pitfalls that we're going to have to swing over, and some more ceiling stuff. As you can see right there, I had to be careful when making that jump not to hit the ceiling, to hit that tentacle stuff coming out of the ceiling there. Now, for the most part, the enemies are the same that we've been dealing with. A lot of them easily dodgeable. We start to see these platforms, these blue platforms, that when you jump on them, they automatically fall down, so it's a little bit hard to jump on them. It's probably one of